just going to call it. I'm going to call it straight out. I'm just going to go for it today. Exactly what it is I'm thinking. I hate comparisons.
Good morning, fellow streakers.
That's where I'm going this morning.
We're going to just jump right in.
Well, I just look at it and, one of the things that I look at in life, okay, so I'm just going to go with where I've been thinking. You can come along for the ride if you'd like. We've got the Supreme Court Justice that's being nominated right now, and she is 48 years old. I'm 3 years older than her, and I feel like I've accomplished nothing in my life. She's got 7 children. She's being interviewed for the Supreme Court. She's this phenomenal woman, and I am 0.
And the interesting thing is I can probably count 10 other people at least 10, that I feel the same way about, that I'm like, wow, I'm older than them, and they put me to shame.
So how is it that I'm seriously looking for this morning, how do I defeat this whole idea of comparison? Because I don't want to take anything away from her. She's phenomenal.
Right.
She's great. I mean, the things that she has accomplished in her life with
Anybody
her children, her family, and not just her. She seems to be right there.
Anybody
right.
that's
yeah,
at that
I really
age
don't care what the
being
political view
nominated
is.
for
It's
what
not.
they've-
I'm not even talking about that. I'm just looking at it, going, "Yeah, I'm nothing."
You're more than nothing, honey. But isn't it amazing that the minute we start comparing, we can go to that place?
That we've just accomplished nothing in life.
I've done nothing. Yes.
I have been a couch potato compared to some of these people.
Yes.
And notice the key word there is comparison.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at it and I think that this is where I start to look at, just revealing to the world the 51 years of my life that I've been out there. And I don't even feel 51. I mean, I feel like I'm 35, and I know, and I've asked my children this before too. We've asked, is it just us?
And they're always so great. They're like, no, you look so much younger.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, you guys are
don't
humoring
believe
us.
a word you're saying at all. 0.
It just defines that we're older, because we're like, we don't look that old, right? It's such an old thing to say.
So what would you say if someone came up to you and said, I want to stop comparing? What advice would you give them?
That is such a good question. What sound advice? First of all, good on you for wanting to stop comparing. That's a good... We're in the right place.
We're in the right... Self-recognition is a good first place.
Self-recognition is a good first place.
Does comparison... Now, is there a place for comparison? In all actuality, is there a place that I can compare with someone or maybe not something, but someone? Is there good comparison out there?
So I had an experience once, because I've thought a lot about this as well. And I was putting my children into swim lessons, and I was deciding whether to do private lessons or group lessons. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to someone, and the instructor, and she said, you can do private lessons, and that's great. They get that one-on-one instruction. But she said, we found that having them in a small group works really well, because it pushes them a little bit better, because they're seeing what the other kids can do, and it can push them too.
So there's comparison right there.
That was it. I was like, okay, so that's an interesting thing. They're being compared to the other kids and seeing what other kids can do. So I do, and I've thought about this a lot, there is a place where sometimes we put limits on ourselves.
Yeah.
Thinking, oh, I could never do this, or certain things that aren't possible.
Mm-hmm.
That when you look at someone else that has done those things, you're like, oh, okay, maybe it is possible. So in that regard, maybe there's a place for the comparison.
So when I look at someone else and it encourages me to be a better person, or to strive for higher heights, or to look at it and think, you know what, they've done it, which means that I can do it. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're thinking about? I mean, that's what I'm kind of pondering on this whole thing.
That's one thing I was thinking about, yes. But it's also an interesting thing, because once you've crossed that comparison line, you're like on the other side of the line. You're comparing now.
Now you're comparing everything. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to come up short at some point.
Always. There's always going to be somebody who's bigger, better, faster, stronger.
Is there?
And if you're
Is there really?
If you're
Can
the
you
person
really?
at the
Can you
top,
get to the top? Can you be there?
Well, even so, let's take sports. There's always somebody at the top.
Right.
It's just a matter of time before somebody else rises to the top. So even when you get to the top,
you're not. It's
just
like
a
that
matter
game.
of time until
what is the
someone
game?
else
King of the
comes
Mountain.
and,
It's basically someone's on top of the mountain until someone else comes and pushes them off.
Pushes them off, and then they're on top of the mountain.
And so that all of that is every single one of that is comparison.
Comparison.
I don't know if it's healthy. I don't know if I feel healthy about comparing to someone else. I don't know if that's a good thing for me. I mean, I guess as I look at it in my life and in our lives together and what we've been doing, there's probably someone out there that may be comparing to us and saying, really, you guys are going to be saying that? I mean, you've published a book, you have a podcast, you've got all these things, and you don't feel like you've measured up. And the answer is yes. I don't feel that way. And if I compared myself to that person, whoever that person is, I'd be like, I'd come up short compared to you as well. I mean, is that right? I mean,
well, and the thing that I think that does is that no matter what, none of us are able to do everything in this life. We're always going to have to pick and choose some things. And so there's always going to be someone who's better at something because we can't do everything.
Mm-hmm.
So in that regards, yeah, anytime there's the comparison.
So this leads me to another question. Is there a time that you feel like you've arrived? Like, you know what? I'm there. I've got it. Everything's handled. We're really good. I'm cruising. Is there an arrival at some point on any of these things?
Maybe the better question is do we want to arrive? I mean, what does arrival mean? Because, everyone talks about climbing the mountain, and then you get to the top of the mountain, you're like, oh, that wasn't the top. That was the plateau. There's more mountains out there. And so that comes back to the old sayings. Maybe that's why these sayings become so popular, is that it's the journey. It's the aspect of the growth that's coming along more than,
so do you
than
sometimes
the actual arriving. However,
yeah,
everything is focusing on, I want to get to there.
Well,
it's difficult.
And honestly, I sometimes look at those things, those sayings, and I'm just going to say it out. Judge me for whatever you want, but I am being raw this morning. I'm being completely vulnerable and raw.
I'm all quiet because I'm more nervous. I'm like, wow, he's really just throwing it out there today.
I am. I'm just looking at it and sometimes I look at those sayings and think, you know what? Those are for the underachievers. Those sayings are for the ones that just aren't really going to make it, and therefore we need to have something that says, hey, you're okay. You can make it. You've done the journey. Good job.
Wow, that's harsh.
I'm just asking. I'm seriously pondering these things. You may look at it and think, wow, he's really lost it. But I'm really thinking about this because I don't think I'm the only one, and maybe I am.
No, you're not.
Maybe I'm the only one that's going through this and thinking about it. But this is something, I mean, as I think about it, it is something real that I'm dealing with. And I got to think that maybe one other person is dealing with this.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there's one other person out there that has figured it out.
Maybe. If they have, please email us at jamie@streakingmastery.com and let us know the answer.
Let us know the answer
to the comparison question. Actually, it's an interesting thing because if I think about it, looking at just kind of the results of some of these thoughts is that, so let's just say what you're saying. Well, that's just for the people that are underachievers.
Mm-hmm. You have a hard time even saying that, huh?
It's harsh.
How come? Why is it harsh? I mean, what is it inside of you that you're looking at that going, wow, that's really tough?
I guess because it makes it seem like, well, there's just people who are going to do it and the rest of the people who aren't. And I just don't believe that. There are people who are accomplished. That's no matter what.
No matter what, there's always going to be people who are accomplished.
But people of accomplishment doesn't mean that everybody else is nothing. And so I guess as I look at it, maybe the answer to the question is that none of it matters in the sense that it's not helping me to grow personally in that comparison, in that looking at it and saying, well, it's just defeating me and that's not going to be helping me accomplish. And so maybe that's why, honestly, some of these feelings is what led us to looking at streaking, is being able to say, is there something that can help us in those times where you're fighting these feelings? Because I do think that we ebb and flow in life. There's times where we do feel like, all right, I'm doing great. And then there's times where something happens and you're like, wow, I'm not even close to where I thought I was. And so needing something that helps level that out a little bit so it's not so volatile. Something that in those times of high, I'm still growing. I'm not sitting on my laurels. And in those times of low, I don't stop and just throw in the towel and be done, but something that evens it out a little bit more so that I'm continuing to progress in the highs and in the lows and all of the stuff in between.
You can
It
help me,
helps.
Dr. Marvin.
That's the movie What About Bob? I love that movie.
I know. You can help me, Dr. Marvin. One of the things that you just said that kind of struck me right to the heart was that it's the smallest, simplest things that, I mean, because even when I'm feeling like I'm feeling right now, the streaks that I currently have, the laughably small streaks, and the ones that I continue, I still want to do them. And it's one of those things, I don't know if the word is right, cathartic.
Mm-hmm.
What is catharsis? It makes you
Something that helps purge and make you feel better.
and so I think that that's one of the things that streaking the smallest things, as you say it, and believe me, right now as we're talking about this was not a setup.
No, it wasn't. That's why I'm looking at him with these wide eyes like, where are we going? This is pretty personal. Pretty raw. But it's
it is.
true
But
that
the
it's...
thing about it, though, is I'm dealing with it right now. I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about my career, my life, our children, all the things that have been going on. Call it a midlife crisis. I mean, 51. Hopefully I live to 102. Let's call it right in the middle of life.
Right in the middle.
And I've seen a lot of life, and I've seen, I hopefully have a lot more. And as I look at it, and seriously, having this Supreme Court nomination, which is broadcast all over, and seeing her in front of this panel, this inquiry, and just how composed she is. And really any of those people, again, I don't really care the political persuasion of any
Anybody
individual.
that goes through that
More
process
what I'm looking at is I think one of the things that she said was that this was an excruciating process.
Yes.
I mean, to be able to go through that. So she's 48, go through that. And I'm thinking to myself going, yeah, I don't know if I could even go. I mean, I look at that and think, wow, how did she develop to that point? And so there's, I think one of the things that you've said as we just kind of work this out is there's the bad comparison where I can never get there and it causes me not to grow or not to do those things. Is there a good comparison? Is there one that it looks at it and like, wow, how inspiring. What an amazing individual she is to be able to sit there. I wonder what I can do to better be able to control my emotion or to lift others or build others or to be involved and serve in a way that lifts and builds, and that it's, I guess maybe comparison, as I look at it, when I'm comparing, I'm looking at all about me, how how I've come up short, how I haven't done these things. Whereas when I'm, and I don't know if the word is not comparing, but when I'm not looking at the bad comparison, and I don't know exactly the word for it, I'm not looking at what that other person has accomplished and what I haven't. I'm looking at it and saying, what can I do to better contribute? How can I contribute in a way that is good and positive and takes on some of those positive attributes that I see this individual have and the individuals before that, where their lives are displayed on, in the public for everyone to see and hear and everything else. How can I be inspired by that? And I think it's more about not thinking about myself and what I'm doing, but thinking about how I can serve others. I don't know. I'm just talking off the top of my head here. What do you think? Where am I going?
Just talking off the top of your head. Where am I going? Where am I? What am I doing?
I'm serious.
I think that you bring up a really good point that if the comparison is too, well, as I look at it, no matter what we've done in the past, we can only start from where we are right now and to learn and to grow. And I truly believe, and this is why, as we were developing streaking, the third law came into place, is that I truly believe that we need other people in our lives to help us grow, to help us see things that we can't see for ourselves. Sometimes that's...
Well, that's one of the reasons why you have the streak of receive and accept one piece of feedback weekly, right?
Yes, is to be able to, one, learn to take feedback, and two, be able to encourage myself to look for those things that I'm not able to see on my own. I think all of us, I think about the way that our actual vision works. And we can only see, I mean, if you put your hands in front of you and you start to move them out to the side, you reach a point where you can't see your hands anymore.
Yeah.
You can't see anything behind you. You can only see what, a certain amount, a certain percentage of what's in front of you. And so I believe that we need each other to be able to get complete pictures of who we are and what our world is made of in order to be able to make those. So we need each other to learn and to grow. I think that when we start to compare in a way that we put each other down, I think that's when we stop the growth, is that we are meant to build one another. However, we are self-aware creatures, and so we're constantly thinking about ourselves. It is difficult to put that aside and value other people's opinion, as well as to decipher through good opinion and bad opinion. So that's where I look at and think the community is essential. Learning how to work through with differing opinions and different feedback, and to decide for ourselves where the truth lies, I think is each of us our own personal journey. And I think that that's part of what I love about, I think that's part of the reason, in all honesty, why we do streaking, why we were genuinely looking for ways to be better at these things, to improve, to maybe part of it was comparing, looking at where other people are and thinking, how did they get there? I think that is a part of it.
That is a good point, because we brought up as we wrote the book, I mean, we looked at other people who had been excellent masters, really good at their trade and their craft, and whether they be in athletics or in any of their professions, any of those things, we looked at those individuals and said, okay, what is it that they're doing? So that's kind of a comparison.
Right. What are they doing?
What are they doing that allowed them to excel at their particular craft? And how can I emulate that? What is it that I need to do to bring that into my life?
And I'm willing to bet that each person, I'm going to say this, but I don't have any study.
This is all based
anything.
on our experience.
This is our own
This
opinion.
is our just own opinion and experience.
But I would
I'm
say
right with
anybody that is accomplishing something, everybody at some point has had a mentor in their life, somebody that they've looked to that is where they want to be, or is at least going to where they want to be going. And they've looked to that person because that person has more experience, more knowledge, more understanding, and knows the things that they don't know yet. I have a mentor that knows the things that I don't know yet, and I want to ask. And
you bring up a good point. It's actually, we just we were on a podcast with Jim Hewling yesterday, and when I say on the podcast, it will be published. It hasn't been published yet. We just recorded it yesterday with him, and he's been a real mentor to me. I mean, I look to him as some of the things that he's learned and some of the sage wisdom that he's gained has helped me to move things along. And one of the things that he said as we were talking yesterday just about the principles of streaking and what it is, and I'm going to try to remember it exactly like he said it, but I'm not going to do it any kind of justice. We'll have to listen to the podcast on Find Your Fire. It's not out there yet. He hasn't released his podcast yet, but as soon as it is, it's something you'll want to listen to. It is absolutely phenomenal. But one of the things that he said to us, and I love the way he states it, he says, I hope I'm not overstating, and I hope I'm not saying it in this way, but he said, what you're putting forth is that magnitude and intensity does not equal consistency, or does it? Consistency is greater. Consistency is greater than magnitude and intensity. And that if you do a laughably small thing consistently, that is more significant than doing something huge, magnificent, occasionally, or intense. And one of the things that we talked about is that how long can you keep up magnitude and intensity?
Right. That's not necessarily sustainable. Some of those things.
You can't sustain it.
Which is why we have goals that you reach for, but sustainability is in the consistency. And it's through that consistency that allows so many things to happen. So as I look at this, I think in the comparisons.
Yes.
When I start to to go down this, which I do often, I think that is part of the reason that streaking has come along, is it's being my way of being able to say, this is where I am now. That's where I want to go. It's a long ways off. But what can I do right now to start doing that without having to do a massive upheaval of my life? Sometimes there are certain times where you're like, I need to make a
Sometimes
massive
you need an
upheaval.
intervention.
Yeah.
Sometimes intervention.
But I can't have an intervention every time I want to add some new.
Why not? Why not have an intervention? Can't I just get the change right
I think that
now?
there is some level of attraction to that where you're just like, all right, scrap the whole thing, start over, let's do it perfect from here on out. And it just doesn't work
It's
that
not
way.
reality. That it doesn't work that way, because I mean, I've felt that way significantly in times past, that, let's just scrap the whole thing. I'll start over. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to tell you the other day, we did a podcast a couple days ago on the number of streaks that we have. And so I went back and just wrote down the start dates of all of my streaks, because I just wanted that all in one place.
Uh-huh.
And it was a really great exercise for me to recognize how slowly I've added streaks into my life. That I started with just one for almost a year before I had the courage to add 3 more in the next year.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that was fascinating to me as I was looking at it is that I started streaks at all different times of the year.
It wasn't like January.
There was no,
and then July.
and it wasn't the first day of the month.
So how did you decide when to start a streak then?
The thing that was great about it is, as I was looking at this, there was it didn't correlate to a date, or it correlated to things in my life that I was like, okay. So for example, the accept feedback, that happened because of a discussion I was having with somebody.
How many days have you been doing that now, or weeks? It's because it's one of your ones that's more recent,
it's a
right?
newer one, yeah. It is 12 weeks.
12 weeks.
I'm on the 12-week program for accepting feedback.
Nicely done. I love it.
But it came because of a conversation that I was having with someone that I saw in myself a significant lack. And I was like, okay, maybe. And I spent a lot of time thinking about that one because I was scared to do that one. Still am, kind of.
Wow. Well, we're at the end of our time. Thank you.
This has been enlightening.
Cathartic.
This has been an interesting podcast, people.
Hey, join us for the next one, where I may get really raw and talk about why it doesn't matter. Well, let's put it this way. If you cared, you'd do it automatically. That's just false. And we're going to talk about that next time, I think. Don't you think? I think that'd be a good one. All right. If you want to reach out to us, do so. Jeffrey at JEFFERY at streakingmastery.com, or
Jamie at streakingmastery.com.
Until we see you, talk to you, or hear you again, keep streaking.
Simple things that make the life we live worth living. Among the rush, do one push up, become a better you. It's the small and simple things that make you grow into what you're hoping. You're in a hurry, don't even worry. It's too simple not to do. It's the little things that make a better you. A better you.